Bidlamhurst State School and Hospital. I was wondering about the past here. The sick, the noise, the pain, and the tears. I often found myself wondering about the outside. I take it out. I just went out 5 times, maybe. The last time I went out there were turns that had been around for 15 years. I remember there was a certain number of children and the elderly who went out every time. I was 37 years old at the time. I don't remember the barbed wire fence that surrounded the shelter lands. The grass hasn't been cut for a few months, but the grass wasn't folded. It was just above the ankles. I heard the kids laugh and have fun. I saw the elderly enjoying the breeze of the air and the grass on their skin. Many of them were tied with a wheelchair and could not move themselves. Sometimes they were left outside for hours while those who could walk within an hour are brought. Those who could not go out were bedridden. I was listening to the wind and the sky. I was happy with freedom for about an hour. There were many young children, who were left in captivity without any tenderness or words addressed to them. There were many adult individuals whose joints slowly merged and remained bedridden for the rest of their miserable lives. No one knew how long they would have the opportunity to move, or even get out of the beds they were in, if they were still able to walk. There were semi-naked or completely naked individuals walking around the aisles. They may have been hiding under the tables, rolling around in one corner, or swaying violently back and forth. Maybe they were sitting on the ground they urinated on, screaming in pain because they knew they could never go out again. There were people wearing tied jackets, many struggling to get out while others sat bent. There were children hanging around the hospital. They were all different. Some of them need wheelchairs that they will never get. They all needed medical care that no one else provided. There were children who had seizures several times a day. No one loved them or wanted them. There were people constantly hitting their heads in the concrete walls, and in some places, there were cracks so many people that many residents no longer wanted to speak or lost scratches. There were people screaming and screaming with a loud voice. There were people who did not belong to this place, and one of them was me. It seemed that people there were not going through any mistakes. But calmly and silently they fell into the clutches of madness. This was not where I wanted to stay at all. I had time to hear the sounds conjure up in my mind. The voices were all different. Some of them cried while others confessed, and few laughed and laughed. There was no way to determine how many voices muttered, wondered, begged, and screamed in pain, sadness, or anger. The voices were whispered from inside the walls and all over the halls. Voices were threatening and warning. Many of them demanded and denied, and some boycotted others. The voices in my head were begging for help, and their voices were raised on top of each other in a desperate attempt to hear by anyone and everyone. They just wanted someone to hear what they had to say, and to hear their begging. I've seen characters walking down the aisles, inside and outside the rooms. Shadows were talking in the corridors and rooms. Many of the characters were only transparent, but each had their own distinctive features. Some features appear inside their faces, such as the shadow of the nose or lips. You can see the eyes. Some of them were beautiful in color and many were like black holes. Some of them had faces and others had no faces. Their heights and weights were varying. Many of them had squint hair. Many of them have never been combed, and they have not been able to shower for weeks or even months. Many of the staff were so busy that they could not take care of all the patients or were too busy to be caring at all. Some people were only a few inches on the floor, and many were able to walk on the cold cement floor. And there were many who were trapped by the bricks that surrounded them. That was all they knew. Many of them have been placed here since they were children, and many of them couldn't see the sky or feel the grass again. The laughter of the children resounded in the halls when there was no small red ball moving up and down in the corridors, inside and outside the rooms without us, as well as the sound of running feet. And much to be kicked by anyone. She was moving on her own. How did they die and where were they buried? The graves carried marks starting from 1, and continued until no one knew when. Most likely, not many of them even had this figure. Many bodies may have been buried without a stone indicating their existence, as they were buried at a depth of 7 feet underground or more. She wondered if the bodies were stacked on top of each other, as if hundreds of bodies had died every day, and there was less and less soil for their eternal life. She wondered if there were gas chambers somewhere on the 700-acre land and whether there was one execution squad one day. She asked whether the victims were forced to dig their own graves. And what about the corpses? Were they forced to stand in one line before their bodies were cremated? Was this place more like the detention camps set up by Hitler? There was a little girl, who was severely beaten and raped every day. She was full of bruises all over her exhausted body. She tried to protect herself from the continuous punches and kicks in the stomach, legs, arms, back and head, which were often directed by her caregivers. She was lying in a small pool of her blood. The blood came from her head and naked. Her skin was feeling cold when she touched it, and the only things she kept on her genitals. Her body was sympathetic. Alive was the short and shallow breaths that she breathed. I tried to save the girl on several occasions, but I seldom worked either to lose consciousness or have to watch. I have been in this hell for more than 40 years. I have seen many things happen inside these walls and become a true friend of this 6 or 7-year-old girl. Her name is Ida, and she is the girl I mentioned earlier. She met an older woman who was in her late teens, or her early 20s, was brought to the log-in log. I was the one who took Ida to the doctor's department in this annoying place. The only way I could get the little girl was to get her the bride's way. And every time I carried her, I could hear a hidden appetite that came out of her mouth. She was in pain, but I couldn't do anything. I was carrying her and her arms hanging under her, as well as her legs. And in my arms, the little girl seemed to be her innocence and her life, suddenly every time. I wanted her condition to improve again. This time she was lucky to have a bed with a mattress or a blanket underneath to provide some comfort. A poor person has died not long ago. She put her on the bed, and saw her right arm falling on her side and falling off the bed. She tried to keep her left arm stay on her chest when she finally managed to lower her entirely. She put her arm back on the bed. Some people are very neglectful when they pass by. Someone could easily break her arms when he passed by. I didn't need any more pain. I just want to see the glow in her eyes as long as I live. I promised her that I would take care of her. Many people were lying on a cold metal table and they were expected to get better again, but I doubt they were starting to feel better. Ida is the second real friend I have met, although she is much younger than me. Esther was the first friend. I never imagined that something like this would happen to my child. Both girls are more like my children than anything else. I won't let anything bad happen to me. I'll try to prove it, but I only worked very few times. I was waiting for her bed every day. Doctors never told me how it would be, and whether it would live or not. Ida has been in a coma for more than a week now. Doctors and nurses did not allow me to stay for a long time, but pushed me away, which made me fall on the cold ground. Or they were dragging me to the hall where I was forced to search for Esther and see if she was okay. I know Esther loves Ida like her sister and will do anything to keep her away from the pain and torment she will have to bear. Esther knows how easy it is to die at the hands of caregivers and any other patients. Others are most likely to be sick. Someone may tear someone's ear. Someone may also bruise. Some may push each other down the stairs. And I heard that someone grabbed a spoon and left marks, and sometimes someone caught my eye. I also heard that someone tore a third of someone's nose. One of them grabbed a knife and cut the sides of the mouth, and he did it from the lips to the jaw. There are a lot of other reports. But I will not address this issue now. Whenever you start finding Esther. I found Esther in an empty room. She found her with her arms and a few fingers. She was unconscious and one arm was too bent at the elbow, and the cabra bone or ulna on the other arm was broken. I think it was probably broken. Some of her fingers were lying in weird corners at the joints and I looked down and saw claw marks on the floor. She looked at her hands and her fingers were stained again. I knew there were no more beds to lie on and rest, but at least you need them to use your arms again. So I asked for help. The help wasn't worth asking for, but if she could get up in the end, it wouldn't be useless. I still need her and Ida. I need them together to escape. I had planned. It was a plan in my head long before I met Lita's little one. I heard that the same night, both girls and I will be out of the house at the same time, about 6 months later. I never had the courage to do it before. Once Ida gets better and Esther gets better, we will all try to escape. I know they wanted to feel free again, the same way I feel, even if they don't realize it now. I have seen horrible things. I have seen my girls raped and beaten many times. I swear I have tried to help them in many cases of accidents. I have tried to kill the men who did it at least once, but I was much weaker than them. I could never hold on to them. I just wanted them to at least lose consciousness. They always broke my fist. One of them kept raping the girl and the other kept hitting my head until I lost consciousness and couldn't move. When we go out, I still want to be able to think about myself. I want to find a hospital where doctors really care about their patients, but I don't know if me or my children are going there. Not after all the trouble we've had from the doctors, nurses and guards. Are they going to take us back to that hell? I don't know if I want to take any risks, not since I'm free. I came to check on Ida and Esther. Ida was on a bed and Esther was lying on the floor with a blanket underneath for comfort. Esther didn't have a pillow for her head, only a small part of the blanket tied at the end. At least both of them were dressed. The last few times they were in that horrible part of the hospital, they were naked and lying on the floor. I don't know how long I'll remember it, but I hope I will for a while now. I want to remember Esther and Ada's face, but not the torture we all had to endure. She looked at Ida, who shivered her fingers several times and moved her feet a little. I don't know when you'll wake up, but I pray to Allah that it will be soon. Esther was awake but couldn't speak, and I don't know if she chose not to or if it was the medicine they gave her. She usually spoke to me when I came to see her. I spoke to her but it wasn't much. I ran my hand all the way down to the back of her head and hair. The last thing I can say is that I love her. Was dragged out of the hospital room where Ida and Esther were. I had no one else to talk to now. They still haunt me as I always do. I worry about them even though they are supposed to be cared for by now. But I still have things to worry about myself. I went to my room. I was happy to have a room to myself, but I wished I could let little Ida and Esther stay with me. The rooms could only accommodate people of the same sex. Most of the rooms had windows and the walls were old and peeling with paint. This was a building with over 20 floors and over 115 rooms on each floor. I was on the 10th floor. When I looked outside, I could see that the grass must be at least knee-deep or higher. The barbed wire fence was as strong as the day it was built. Parts were falling off and some were almost completely broken off. I don't think it will ever be fixed again. The sounds come back again. I hear children laughing and some people running through the long dry grass. Oh my God, I hear people screaming now. There's a gunshot. It's so loud. I hear grass moving as if someone is running. And now it's silent. The breeze has stopped blowing and the grass has stopped moving. The people have stopped screaming. All I hear now is an older man's voice. He's talking to someone. I can't understand what he's saying. I hear the grass moving again. A groan in the grass. I hear a clanging sound as if something was thrown into the back of a cart or a vehicle. Now no the man. It sounds like he's picked up something. Trust me, there's something else. No sounds. No sound. I hear nothing. Did I just hear a child killed? Or several children? Was there an adult? Who was killed? Why do the sounds want to remind me of the past again? Don't they understand that I realize that many events have happened in this place's past? A past that seems unimaginably unforgettable. I hate it when images flash through my mind. I don't want to see someone's head explode again. I don't want to feel the blood and tissue scattered all over my body as if I were there to witness it. Most of the time, it feels so real, like I'm feeling the pain, experiencing all the mental breakdowns, slowly dying from the inside. It feels like glass shattering inside your heart. The glass will tear the tissue of your heart apart and you will feel your heart beating faster and faster. Blood will spurt from that wound and you will slowly die from internal bleeding. How we escaped. I think back over and over again. Night has fallen again. As I lie in my bed, I think back over and over again about what went wrong and what the possibilities are of how I escaped alive. My first worry is that damn barbed wire fence. How are we going to get past it? My biggest fear is the guns the caretakers will carry when they find out some of the people have escaped. I can't have another internal breakdown. I think my body will be paralyzed, especially if one of my children gets shot. I can't stand it. I'll beg to die. There are 2 panes of glass in the window. I looked out the 7-foot-high window, which was divided into 14 separate panes of glass in each row. There was a beautiful full moon in a clear, starry sky. The moon gave just enough light to see the dry grass swaying in the wind. The branch in front of my window kept much of the scenery hidden from my view. It was a beautiful night. I lay awake for what seemed like hours. At one point, the pitch blackness swallowed my mind whole. I was finally asleep. The morning light dipped into my room. I remembered that someone had closed the door to my room late at night, and there was no doubt that they had closed it. Some nights the doors were closed and other nights the doors were open and not closed. As soon as I sat up in bed, I saw that my door was open again. I wonder how I wake up on nights when the doors were unlocked. I have no doubt that everyone in this place has nightmares every night, every time I close my eyes. This time, there were pictures of baby Ida stuck in my skull. I saw that she was lying on the floor. I did not see her chest move at all. Her body did not move at all. She slowly approached her. She stared at her for a long time, as if in shock. I knelt on my knees, checking her breathing and pulse. I put my head to her mouth and nose. I know now that she is not breathing. She checked her pulse on her wrist and neck. I felt nothing. She was dead. Esther was lying unconscious on the floor, right next to Ida. She thought she was dead until her body jumped. She looked around in confusion about her fate and who she was. I never saw how all this happened to them in my nightmare. I got out of bed and went to Ida and Esther. The hospital part was taken up by the first floor and most of the second floor, and it is possible that the third floor was once part of the hospital a few decades ago or more. When I go down so many stairs, I stay on the first or second floor most of the day. The kitchen and dining room are located on the first floor. Most of the activity rooms are located on the second and third floors. I hated all the medical rooms. They all showed torture and pain. I hated the EVS therapy room the most. Have you ever felt electricity tearing through parts of your body? I felt like that many times. I finally got to the room they were supposed to be in. I went in. At first, I didn't see them. It wasn't good. What if they died? Maybe they needed more special care, or maybe surgery was needed again. I just wish I could find them before the long, exhausting day was over. There are over 200 rooms where they could be. It took over a day before I found them. I spent most of the first day opening and closing every door in the long hallways. By the second day, there were less than 100 rooms to look through. I spent about 12 hours searching through all of those rooms. After I couldn't find them, I went back to the room where they were. They weren't there, so I looked 2 doors to the right. They were in room 114 this time. I didn't know why they were transferred. The nurses didn't like me. I couldn't get into the room. One of the doctors came in through the door as you were about to go in. He pushed me back so hard it felt like a rag doll was being thrown into the air. I think my feet were about 2 feet away. When I finally hit the ground again, I couldn't keep my balance. I stumbled before slamming my body into the wall. I hit my head and felt the back of my head. When my hand came back into view, there was blood. I felt dizzy, and my vision was getting blurry and I felt like I didn't have much control over my body. I sat on the wall, until everything slowly went black. I held my hand on the floor because I felt my body sliding down the wall. I woke up in the morning, lying on the same wall. When I got up from the floor, I heard the crackling of my joints. I have to admit that it helped me get rid of the pain along my spine for a while. I walked into the room in front of me. I always put my hand on the wall for support and rest on my back from time to time. I sat down next to my children. I saw that Esther was no longer speaking. Ida was still unconscious. I think it was no more than 2 weeks and 2 days. The days of this hell were dragging her ass. I looked at the baby Ida again. Her eyes were open. She has been lying for a long time. Her eyes were fixed, staring at the ceiling. She just looked at her beautiful brown eyes. In the end she threw her eyes and her head at me. She opened her mouth as if she wanted to speak, but everything she said was inaudible. I tried to speak again. Her beautiful voice was now heard. Edgar, what happened? Where am I? Dear, you'll be fine. I was crying anyway. There was a short stop. Dear, everything will be fine. Edgar, Edgar, why are you crying? I'm so glad to see your eyes again, I said, crying. Where's Esther? Her voice was beautiful and nice. To try to speak, I looked at Esther, who was smiling happily. She was moving her mouth as if she wanted to speak. I gave her a few more seconds. Nothing came out. Esther, right next to you. Just lying on the floor instead of bed. She smiled. She smiled with great joy again. I looked at Esther. She was still smiling. She was trying to speak again. Finally, her voice came out. Ida, I'm here down. Look, here's down from the cage inside her. Her voice was all Ida. I missed hearing your voice. I missed seeing your face. Ida, Esther, it's okay. She can hear you. In fact, she is looking at you now. Do you see? I said Elster. She was looking at another place while she was talking. She turned her head to look at me and then at Ida. Ida kept looking at Esther. I miss you, Esther. I love you. Then she looked at me and stretched out her arms to hug me. Edgar, I love you any kind. I hugged her in my arms, and put my head on her shoulder. I hope you know that I am. I will always take care of you. You know that, don't you? I do. I am standing. She stretched out her arms, which were in a poorly crafted splint. I sat down. Alcon kneeled at her level. I hugged her. Esther L. looked with great love. I whispered in my ear, do you not love me? I pushed her away from our hugs so I could look into her eyes. I really love you. I will never allow anything to happen to you. Don't you understand that I do my best so that you don't get hurt anymore? I pulled her into my hug again. I think this is the first time in 2 weeks that I have embraced Esther. Now that I think about it, Ida was occupying most of my thoughts at the time. Our hugs are over, and I feel someone holding my arm hard. I didn't have enough time to get on my feet. The man dragged me out of the room. His voice was louder than mine. His voice was silly and threateningly. Why do you see these girls every day? They don't love you. They try to confuse you. I have to shoot your head, one less to deal with. No, I can't do that. Nonsense traumatology. I already felt my body being closed to me. His fist became stronger as I continued to feel weak and weak. I tried to stand on my feet, but it seems I was slower than doing it. The man put his arm under one arm and the other arm went up from under my knees. He lifted me up, and I felt nauseous. He put me on the table in the treatment room. Before I lay down, give me a small cup of cereal and a drink of water. Once I lay down, I stretched out my legs and put my arm on my side. There was no point in fighting when there were 7 nurses or caregivers in the same room. Anyone can easily overcome me. I fought in the past, but in the end it ended up getting worse. There were 2 people working to tie my legs and arms. One of them was at the control panel. The other person held the electric head covering, the electrical conductor, and the mouthpiece. Then I rubbed the gel on the corners of my forehead. Then they put the mouthpiece in my mouth, and I felt like I was finally vomiting, and they put the piece of electricity in the place where the gel was supposed to stun my head. One of them closed my mouth and others held my body. The convulsions were as violent as always, as I understood, as one of the other patients who was looking through the electric shock therapy window on the door told me. I was sent to an unconscious state of mind, to a state of complete forgetfulness. Where am I really the hell? How did you get here? I went back to a completely different room. I wasn't in the same room with Ida and Esther. How did you get here? All I know is that there are elevators that can only be used for hospital beds and the physically handicapped who are unable to walk. Then I remembered that I was only on the 1st or 2nd floor. But if you're on the 2nd floor, how can I get the bed I'm on here? What happened? That's all I wanted to know. I was lying on a metal table, but there was a thin mattress under me. I didn't feel cold, at least that's what I thought. I sat as fast as I could and suddenly I felt dizzy. I lay again after I grabbed my head in the palm of my hand for a small moment. I was trying to find out where I am and what happened. I felt it would be better not to know. My head hurts more than anything I felt before, so I decided to go to sleep. When I woke up again, I was in my room. Nothing has changed in my room. The windows were still covered with dirt and dust. I sat down and saw that some of the wax fixing the window with its frame was slowly flowing on the edges of the glass panels at the bottom of the windows. The black cover on my bed is still loose, as it was months ago, and maybe years ago. The pillow cover is no longer white but slowly turns brown and black. The box at the end of my bed still has nothing inside, I think. It has been empty for years, since my parents abandoned him the day they brought me here. I was just a little bit young, maybe it was off. Since I came here, I have always been in this room, since I was 5 years old. I don't know if this is true or not, but I think I was with an older guy who was in his late 1950s. He was with me for 7 years. He died and I hope he didn't die slowly and painfully. If so, his screams simply matched the hundreds who were screaming and screaming every day. The book is still on the wall as it is. Voices in the halls and sounds in the walls. I am afraid of demons, but the demons are here wandering the shadows inside and outside the rooms, but that's what I can assume. They found me years after my suicide. I wasn't crazy, but that's how they played the two games. Not entirely a letter, but it seems like I don't know how long this has been. I feel like I wrote it. He talks about what he's commanded. If you were just here, you would understand. I can't find a way to tell you or explain to me what this writing is doing to me inside. I got up and walked towards the door. The grandfather opened it, a man staring at the full void. His looks were like she could tear my guts. There was nothing in his eyes, it was as if the crow had swallowed them up. I stood paralyzed. Could it be even? He blinked his eyes. His eyes are no longer black, but full of color. He looked around like he was disheveled, not knowing how he got here. After a moment or two, simply walk away. I looked down the hall with my head right behind the door frame. I saw the man falling. He was very close to the edge of the stairs. He was afraid that he would lower his head or heels on the stairs, and I ran towards him. I knew I wasn't fast, but he wasn't moving much. I didn't know if he was yet conscious. The closer you get, the more you continue to hear the steps that are getting closer and closer, as if they are running. I was close to the stairs now. When I was about to check the guy, I felt my hands on my back. The next thing I know, I was moving at a crazy speed down the stairs. It was the stairs and I finally stopped after hitting the wall. I couldn't get up. My head was heading towards the stairs and I saw the man's body rolling, folding towards me. The man I would have helped. He was just about 10 steps away from hitting me. I felt some shrinking. I heard the blow. The last thing I remember is that my head hit the ground. I am now lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was still at the same wall. The wall was made of cement and I saw that there was a shallow hole in the wall now. That hole was where I had hit. When I finally opened my eyes and my vision was no longer blurry, I saw that the man who had fallen like a rag doll after me yesterday or later today was dead. His eyes were still open. I have never seen who pushed me down the stairs as hard as that man. I don't know if I want to know now or not. Maybe it's because I'm too afraid to know what his or her face looks like. Maybe it's because I'm afraid of the demons and monsters that lurk within our souls, just under our skin. Some days, I can feel the poisonous curse coursing through my veins and hear the screams getting louder and louder inside me, but the sound never escapes. Have you ever sat and stared at a wall for hours? I mean, trying to make sense of the world around you. That was the moment, except that the wall and whether it was real or a demonic spirit were still stairs. I wanted to know if the person who pushed me down was haunting these walls. Nothing made sense until I saw the blood trail on the stairs. I knew that someone or something wanted to kill me or the dead man. That was all I could conspire if I was in that man's head. After a while, I knew that this escape plan needed some adjustments. I still had a few more months before the day came. I think it was another few hours before I felt any sensation in my body. My leg muscles were giving me this tingling sensation, as if a few thousand needles or pins were constantly piercing my skin. I didn't feel any broken bones. Even if I did, the casts that were put on were always poorly made and the bones would never heal to look normal. I wasn't going to see my children. Today I needed to indulge in my own thoughts. I just needed hope and prayer so that I could make sense of this demonic abode. I had lived here most of my life, and I would be damned to the depths of endless hell if I died here. Most of the thoughts I had were very unpleasant, but somehow, it was as if they weren't my thoughts. I couldn't remember ever having such thoughts. Yet the thoughts were as clear as any other. They were just feelings that had grown deep inside me. I guess they were more of a nuisance than a feeling. The thoughts were rushing into my mind like the sounds were rushing in. But the listening sessions were short and consisted of snatches of children laughing, People screaming, crying, but mostly laughter. It was as if I could tell who was talking and who was upset. Sometimes the words were meaningless and completely distorted. Sometimes, when the voices came, it was hard to tell the difference between innocence and complete loss of words. Sometimes, the older voices sounded like children talking. Sentences were incomplete and words were completely missing. I had a few voices that I could relate to because they gave me their name. But most of them, many of them, remained among the lost and forgotten. I honestly wanted to know why they wanted to remain among the lost. Didn't they want to know that someone cared? In the midst of my thoughts about my plan, I heard voices. The escape plan was unclear. All I knew was that we had to get out of the walled-off Tophet. Behind this hell was everything I knew nothing about. I knew a lot about death and fear, but the pastures held many hidden stories and mysteries. I knew very well that we could all be shot and left to rot. The only thought that came to my mind after that was, who will be shot first? Was I so hard-hearted as to think? Maybe it was cold-hearted, but it's not like it won't happen. Maybe, if any of us survive, it will be Esther. If you think about it literally, she'll probably be the one who survives. They brought me here when I was a baby or a very young child and I'm 53 now, I think. Esther is in her early 20s at the most, and they brought her here when she was a little girl, maybe 5 or 6. And little Ida, they brought her here as a baby, I think she's 7 at the most. Of the three of us, Esther will remember the most of the outside. But here, she's never once been outside these damned walls. She's been outside at the most 6 times since I've been here. Maybe I'm the only one left alive. If that's the case and I'm brought back, my mind won't be crazy anymore, but my mind may be damned by the ways of Lucifer himself. Let my heartbeat keep Satan at his feet as he dances in the fires of hell. My soul will be his. Let me have chains to keep myself from burning myself 1,000 times. I never imagined that at that moment or moments like it I could think as I did. Death was so common and it was so important to care for all these people that his words were a constant reminder that I and the rest of these people knew nothing about heaven or God. The staff was so few and outcast. As I will always remember, people were never able to walk inside a bed or a bed of any kind. Whether it was the bedridden on the upper floors or like those in the hospital. People never combed their hair or bathed. Such simple skills as washing hands or turning on a faucet, even how to use the toilet, had deteriorated. If anything had improved, it was the amount of madness that was building up inside our minds. It's not that it was any better, but we could all get an insanity defense if we blew someone's brains out all over the wall and sent them to court for trial. Madness made us all better actors. As the sky began to darken and night began to rise, my thoughts kept racing. Cursed within this filthy hell, even death will never do us part. I woke up in a state of oblivion, almost paralyzed. I couldn't feel anything in my body for a long time. Wheelchair, wheelchair. How could I confine myself to a wheelchair after all this damn time? My face was still numb. My back, oh my God, my back and my head. Oh my God, what happened? What happened? What happened? Why did one of the windows shatter? How did the metal grate in front of the glass shatter? The grate is there to protect people from jumping out of the window. I need some understanding of what happened earlier. Oh my God, do I need that? I saw a little girl hanging by her feet from the ceiling, the rope tied to what looked like a thick, unstable wooden board. She was wearing a white dress or gown. The fabric was still close to her skin as were her arms. Her arms didn't hang properly underneath her because of the way they were tied. Something wasn't right. Her body continued to spin slowly in circles as the rope was also tangled in knots. From behind, I could tell she was dead. As soon as I saw her front, her face was distorted. Her lips and eyes were closed. Oh yeah, her hair wasn't swinging to the floor either. It was up like her arms and nightgown. I stood there waiting but also staring. I thought I saw her hand reach out to grab me and pull me closer to her. But suddenly, her nightgown, arms, and hair fell away. I saw what she was wearing underneath, which was nothing. I wanted to know if this girl had been hanged upside down for committing sexual acts against someone else or herself. Was she hallucinating? I wondered. I heard a girl's voice along with a man's. I could only describe it as sex. From what I was told, I heard moans of pleasure. The little announcements came faster and louder and nonstop. She let out little gasps of air as if she couldn't breathe when this was happening. I tried to speak, but most of the time it was just quiet little screams. When that happened, the man would say, "Shish, I think it might be the person upstairs." His voice was shaky, and so was his breathing. His voice was deep, but louder than mine, too. They got faster because I heard his breathing get faster. The words became nothing. It was a short session, all I knew. I heard someone fall to the ground. After a while the breathing became steady. "How was that?" the man asked. "You can't forget it," the girl replied. They lay on the ground for a while because all I could hear was soft breathing. They talked back and forth like friends. Then I heard the door start to open and strong footsteps approaching them. I heard a man say, "Put your damn clothes on. Come with me and you can go down the stairs." Now, I heard clothes rustle. I heard someone slap hard enough to cause a bruise later. The girl, I think. The man dragged the girl down the hall and then down the stairs. I don't know exactly where they were. All I have is tried to tie her feet together. He threw the rope over the boards and used the rope as a pulley to make them into the tunnels. I thought the man was carrying Love. Her body was completely lifted off the ground. He tied her there tightly and walked away. A few moments later, I heard a gunshot. I think that was the man's death. Now the moans of pleasure started again. Were they enjoying another session of sex forever? It's been 2 months since I last wrote. I don't understand how I still have the ability to write. After all these years, I thought I would lose this wonderful talent. I'm also quite surprised at my ability to think straight. I haven't completely lost my mind. Have I really? Over the past few months, I've noticed that I've been stopping randomly in the hallways or elsewhere, staring into oblivion. Often I'd look at the floor. The floor wasn't made of concrete or cement or anything else. It was green like the grass that falls right after the winter snow melts, not grass. The grass was a light, watery brown. The floor was just grass. Sometimes the walls of the hall were covered in grass and sky. It looked like a large hayfield surrounded by woods that marked the outer edges of the field. It was beautiful. But when I was losing attention to everything around me, it wasn't about what I was seeing. It was more about my thoughts. I was looking at the ground though. It looked like grass even when I wasn't thinking about it. Often my thoughts would go to a very unnatural level to the point of waking up, with no recollection of how I got to where I was. There was a small scar or scratch on my hand that looked like a cross. I don't remember what it was. It was strange. A man came up to me and said, "Jesus is taking care of you." Another said, "Satan has claimed you." At first I thought what the man said about Jesus was true, but Jesus wouldn't carve a cross on someone's finger like that. Satan would enjoy doing something like that. Is Satan after me? What should I do? And Esther came to my room. I wasn't sure what to do. I know I haven't seen them in a long time. What if they changed during this period? What if I changed during this period? I became more detached. I lost all the freedom that I had in this unforgiving hell. 2 more months left until the day comes. What are you doing? Ida asked. Oh, no, my love. Has it changed? Is there anything more like it was? Esther replied. You have definitely changed. Do you still care about us? You said you wouldn't let anything bad happen to us. You gave up on us. You know what? I hate you. You don't deserve anything. No, I'm sorry. Can't you believe me? I really love you. Oh, if you loved us, you wouldn't have left us alone for a long time. I don't understand how this happens to me. I was crying at this moment. All she said was something that could not help but restore me. Esther Ida took and forced her out. Ida was struggling to get things right. I love him. I love him. I really want to go. Let me go. Let me go. I love him. He didn't mean to do it. He never did it. Let me go. Her voice faded when they went to the bottom of the hallway. I heard a strong voice and a strong voice from the outside. I went to the stairs. I saw them at the bottom of the stairs. Esther was crying. I didn't mean to do it. I just fell. Esther was rubbing hair. Ida shook a lot. Wake up. Wake up. All I saw was Ida's head shook as her body shivered. I went down the stairs. Esther carried her. Can you walk? Then I saw her leg. Stay there. I will take you back. Please don't hate me. I love you with everything I can. I offer you. Less than greater than I would like to take a discussion. I took Ida to my room. I put it on my bed. I put it on the edge of the bed, near the wall. I went back to Esther. Esther carried and said, I love you. I think the pain was severe because she lost consciousness. I took her to my room and sat down on me from the bottom of the stairs. I looked at my bed. I tore a piece of cloth from my blanket. I went to the bathroom to wash it. The water was rusty when it was flowing. I let him flow when he looked like forever. I was supposed to be in the bathroom alone. I didn't see the reason. Finally, the water became as clear as it was supposed to be. I put the long black cloth under the water. The water flowing into the sink was very dark. The black color was actually close to light gray. I heard steps approaching. I stopped for a moment at the bathroom door. I felt a shiver in my hand and the roughness of my teeth. I don't want to be exposed to the skin again. I still have scars from years ago since I had a skin. I hid in a cabin. The steps started again, and it passed. I felt comfortable. I quickly finished washing the fabric. I grabbed the other piece of cloth. I washed her quickly and went back to the room, red on the pillow, where her head was. As soon as I returned to my room, she shook the two cloths. One of them wrapped around Ida's head. I saw a bad person lying down. Then I took out the other fabric. I put it on the chest. I went looking for something that could keep the Esther legs straight. The only thing I was able to find was a few hangers that were hanging in my dress. There were only a few clothes out there. I straightened the metal hangers as best I could. I put a few hangers on each side and tied it with a small piece of cloth that tore. Then the same on the other side and bottom. With what's left of me, she wrapped her leg as best I could. I sat waiting to see their eyes again. It will take these last few minutes for you to heal so that we can escape. The night came at the end of each day, as was the case. I covered them with the cover that was always on that bed. Tomorrow I will wash it in one of the sinks. At least this way there will be less dirt covering the entire bed. I didn't want to cover them with it, but how they could warm themselves up. I lay down on the floor. It was actually like sitting and watching my girls. After a while, I put my back on the wall. I had no worries. After a long time, she slept there on the wall. The morning came. I heard someone walk towards the room. There was a hand on the door handle, and I saw her spin. What I saw was not human or alive. What I saw was a man wearing worn clothes. He looked like me now. What I saw was dark fog. But in this fog, I could see a pair of eyes, a nose, and perhaps a mouth. It must have pushed me down the stairs a long time ago. I wasn't scared until I heard him laugh. I am no longer in good hands. As this thing was approaching me, I looked into my hand and I reminisced about the scar of the cross that hit me. He extended his hand. I think he was trying to pull my heart out of my chest. Once I caught him, what I thought he did happened. The cover made annoying sounds and the devil disappeared into the air. I tried hard to control my heartbeat and my breathing. I looked at the bed and saw two eyes staring at me. They were Ida's eyes. Edgar, what's the matter? Don't you see that? I mean, nothing. It doesn't matter, my dear. How do you feel? I don't know. My head hurts so badly, Edgar. You will be fine. I am here for you. I say, I beg for the air again. The thing that came after me is still attached to every place I go, whether to the bathroom or my room. I was more terrified than ever. He always felt like he was hanging on the back of my shirt, pulling me back or holding my heart until I felt like my heart would explode like a balloon. I looked at the bed that the two girls were not still on. They were awake. Ida's head was seriously bruised. The bruise was dark purple and black. Esther's leg was getting better because she told me she was hurting much less than yesterday. The day is approaching and both need time to recover. Ida, you can walk around, but please don't lose sight of my sight. Take care of your precious head, my dear. Ida got out of bed and walked around. Esther, you know you should stay there. When it's time to eat, Ida and I will go downstairs. I'll bring you something to eat. I don't want you to be taken away from me, not now. Not yet. It was Esther. Edgar, can I call you Papa? Why, do I look like a father to you? You're the only person who loved me enough to stay in my life. Sure, my dear. I looked at Esther. How much do you think it will take before you fully heal your leg? It might take a few months, until the day we're here. If you don't fully heal by that time, I am still what you're doing, I'll do it anymore. I can't stand it anymore. I need to get out of here. I take risks and go with you. Yes, okay. But your leg. We can find somewhere, where they will actually take care of their patients, right? Yes, I think. But how did I know about escaping? I never told you that. I know I never told Ida. It's too young to keep this secret as it is. I hear you muttering to yourself at night. I know I have to sleep, but I wanted to know. All you do on this floor is to talk to yourself. Why? Why what? I don't understand exactly what you're asking me about. Why don't you talk about yourself? Are you not telling yourself or what? I don't talk about myself because I'm not important now. You and Ada are important. You are the most important thing in my life. You know very well that I came here when I was younger than Ida. Maybe I was a little girl. You know when you come here, you're trapped. And you have nowhere else to go. You can only bring any clothes with you when you are here. Nothing else. When they brought me here, I was placed in this room. I said I'm turning with my arms up and my hand is stretched out. I have been here with an older man. He's not here anymore. He's dead. I don't know how, but all I know is that I've never seen him anymore. That box was always out there. I never had any games, and no one played with me. I don't have this bed and that window, but every time I look out of that window now all I see is bars carrying me inside here. Because I know, all those who tried to escape were shot in the back. There was no warning, only the sound of the bullet came out of the barrel of the gun, but that was not enough. The land, and the guards left them to bleed to death. 2 of the strongest guards came out and carried the bodies to the mortuary. See, even in death, you cannot escape here. But in the end, you cannot escape here. I need this time to check all the details to make sure that we all survive. I cannot live knowing that you or Ida were shot. I was begging to die. I try to take you with me. But I will be hit by a bullet in the back. If you or Ida are shot, I will be paralyzed. I want you not to tell Ida. And if I ask you any questions about what I've heard about this, just say I don't know. Okay.